Leadership and Yoga fam. I have been counting down the days since November because I've been so excited to share this interview with you, and it's here. It's happening. Before I get you into this episode with Victoria Hutchins, I have 3 really important announcements that I want to share with you. Number 1 is that the link to purchase a copy of Make Believe for yourself and to hold the magic of the words in physical form in your hands is in the show notes. You know that supporting people who inspire you with their words is incredibly helpful. So that is in the show notes. If you are here, if you are listening to my words, it would mean the world to me if you would please take a moment to drop me a rating and also to subscribe to my show. If you enjoy this episode with Victoria and you could share it with the world, with a friend, anything that you can do, that is really where the momentum comes from, and it's why I'm able to bring you this episode in the first place. Today's episode is brought to you by 2 friends of the Leadership and Yoga podcast. If you are a fellow yoga teacher or a coach and you have said that this will be the year that you will finally get your offers organized in the online world, I have looked all over far and wide to find the best system for having on-demand courses and classes, and Offering Tree has an unlimited library for you, and they also include things that other softwares don't include, like a website that you easily control and assistance from real people who actually know your name. I'm stoked that right now Offering Tree is giving a free trial to listeners of this podcast, so you can visit offeringtree.com/Shauna Crew. That's offeringtree.com/Shauna Crew to get your free trial. Offering Tree is one of my trusted advisors for my yoga business, and so if you've been looking for a sign or you've been looking for a first step that makes sense, pause me real quick and go start this free trial so that way you can set it up later on. And secondly, this podcast is brought to you by Tend. And Tend is one of my other trusted advisors, specifically Sophia Art, who is currently guiding me through a series of consultations on how to live a life of rhythm through the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda. I'm also going to put her booking link in the show notes because it is so hard to find guidance around things like food and self-care that feels personalized and also incredibly holistic. And each time that I speak with Art, I am left feeling absolutely mind blown, but also more relaxed as she really simplifies these feelings of wellness overwhelm that I was having around all the different competing advice that we hear for taking care of ourselves these days. If you want to start off the year with a fresh perspective on your health, you can book a consultation with her and you'll see exactly what I mean. Let's start with a deep breath. Feels nice.
I love that.
Victoria Hutchins, welcome to the Leadership and Yoga podcast. I am taking this all in right now because if you're tuning in, what happened is we just literally met each other in person for the first time, and within 20 minutes of that are already sitting down to talk. So thank you for being here with me. It's an honor. And yeah, if you want to go ahead and say hello to everyone.
Well, first of all, I'll say hello to you. You look beautiful. I'm like taking you in person. It's such a funny thing when because I feel like we're friends already. I feel like I've known you a million years, but this is the first time we've met. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Should I introduce myself?
I'm going to introduce you.
Okay.
So I'm going to say most people tuning in probably know who you are. If you do not know who Victoria is, number 1, you better go running immediately to listen to all the things and to read everything she's written because it is absolutely stunning. You know, I think the thing about you is that, well, number 1, you're the creator of the, what I like to call iconic poetry flows on Instagram. And you're also the author of Make Believe, which we're going to be talking about later on in the show. And when I listen to your things, it's really a sort of a healthy dose of big sister reassurance. And at the same time, it has this depth and this complexity that reminds me literally what it means to be human. And I don't think there's any greater feeling than listening to something like that and then getting back to your day. So yes, I guess other things about you: attorney turned content creator, content artist. And yeah, I'm really, really excited to get to know you even more today. And I think it's been about a year now since we talked last on the podcast. And at that point, I know that you were about to make the leap and quit your job and jump into all of this full time. So how has that ride been over the past year?
It's wild that it's been a year.
Yeah.
And likewise, looking at you as a creator and a person, it's just been so beautiful to watch you bloom throughout this year, and knowing you for a year. I mean, even us being in this cool studio,
yes.
Just what an amazing thing to see. I think the journey of, so I left my full-time corporate job right after we spoke, I think, in November of last year. So it's been right on a year now. It's been amazing and hard and exciting. I feel like I am living in color. I know that's trite, but like for the first time, I just feel like, not to say every day is a good day, but I'm really in the ring, and I'm really spending my days doing things that I love, which is just the biggest privilege in the world. And it's been a learning curve. It's so different working a corporate job of any type versus being self-employed. It's so different. And I think
dramatically.
Navigating that is hard. But on balance, I would say it's been absolutely incredible. These have been the best past few years of my life, honestly.
Wow.
I just feel like I'm rediscovering parts of my personality that I lost. And
did you think any of this was really possible? You know, if I would have been speaking to the you 3 years ago, I mean, was this in your dream and your plan, or was it much more of an unfolding that was somewhat unexpected to you?
Well, I think that as soon as I got an inkling of a possibility, I was gunning for it, honestly. It's funny being a content creator. I think so many people act like, oh, it just happened, and I don't know, I was posting for fun, and that wasn't how it was for me. It was very intentional, but no, I didn't think it was possible at first. And I definitely had several moments where I started to become aware, or I started to believe in myself a little bit. Like, I remember New Year's Eve 2022, I think it must have been. So I was creating social media content. I was growing, but I was still full-time corporate lawyer.
So this is about a year before we spoke.
Yes, about a year before we spoke. I went to this yoga class. It was like a yoga and meditation class with this great teacher, Nancy Perry, in Houston. She's like a very renowned teacher.
I'll have to go check it out.
Yeah, she's incredible. She's actually opening a new studio in Houston right now. But I went to her class, and there was like, this very powerful meditation because it was New Year's Eve. They gave you a candle, and for whatever reason, that class really, I came out of that class feeling sure I was going to change my life. Like, I made a TikTok about it, being like, I think I'm going to change my life
unlocked
this year.
Something. Yeah,
which is people are so hard on the New Year's resolution or people, but I really wasn't. This is the year I'm taking back my life. And I did, I went home and I talked to Roy, my husband, and said, what would it need to look like for me to leave my corporate job and really give this a try? And we made a plan, and then I just gunned for it. And
when you say gun for it, what do you mean exactly? What was going on in the mental side of that, and also how was that carrying out into actions that you were taking?
Yeah, I think that I'm a big affirmations girl. I really believe in that. So I think a lot of it was just telling myself constantly that it was possible, and being extremely specific with what I was aiming for. I would write in my affirmations. I used to write things like, I am inspired. Now I'm writing, I am a full-time content creator. I make this much money a year. You know what I mean? Extremely specific in what I wanted. And that really does change the way you move through the world.
Was that something that you switched on at this point, or was it something that you were already doing for years and years?
Do you mean affirmations?
Yes.
I think that it's something that I got more focused on in this time in my life. So when I was a corporate lawyer for the first 3 years, I worked for a large law firm. And then for the last 2 years of my corporate legal practice, I worked in-house for a company. And when I was at the law firm, I just had absolutely no time to be a human being. Like it is truly, and that's not a condemnation of the firm that I was at. I really do think most of the large law firms are like that, but I had almost no identity or goals or life outside of my job. And so when I switched to working in-house, where if you're an attorney, going in-house means you're working for a company versus working for a law firm, which I know you know, but just for...
Yeah, I worked on the business side, but I saw a lot of people who were in your position, and I felt something deep because, you know, that was my plan. I was going to go to law school, and I saw all of the, you know, young women who had already gone and done that, and they were more interested in talking to me about yoga and things than ever saying like, oh yeah, this is my career. And so I understand, completely. I feel for what you're saying.
I would be so interested to hear what was the moment for you that you decided that wasn't the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that when I switched to a job where I had a little bit more time is when I started to reconnect with myself in a lot of ways. And with that came creative practices and spiritual practices and all of that. But for a lot of my 20s, when I was in law school and working for the law firm, I had very little going on with me outside of my job. I had no friends in Houston and, you know, had been there for years. There was just very little going on with me. So I think that...
Are you from Houston?
No, I'm from North Carolina, Jamestown, North Carolina.
Okay.
Small town. It's a suburb. It's not a small town in a cool way. There's not like a bunch of cows and that sort of thing. It's just like a small suburb strip mall.
Got you.
Vibes. I'm from North Carolina, and I went to college in New York, and then I went to law school in Nashville, and then I moved to Houston from there. But Roy, my husband, his family is... there. I just got married. Sorry if I'm saying my husband a lot. That's so annoying.
Isn't it crazy to say it?
It's so crazy. Yeah. And I love husband like as a word because I hate fiance. It's such a sinister word. It sounds so pretentious. Fiance. I just avoided saying that at all costs. I was one of those who, while I was engaged, I would say partner.
Me too.
Which is like, I am bisexual, but I still feel like when you say partner, you're like, trying to make yourself
assuming,
But yes, my husband, I don't remember what I was saying. Oh, his family is in Houston. And so that was a big reason why I was looking at jobs in Houston coming out of law school. And it was also just a better legal market than, or, you know, better is subjective, but like there were much more opportunities at large law firms compared to North Carolina, where I'm from.
That was beautiful. I totally derailed what you were telling me about the actions that you were taking with all those questions. But so what else? So in the affirmations, and then what else was that kind of carrying into?
Yeah. Well, so I think, you know, the point of anything like affirmations or manifestation adjacent stuff is to inspire action, right? And so if a lot of trying to be a creator is creating, throwing spaghetti into the void and like seeing what sticks. And so there was a lot of that. I was posting on TikTok like a fiend. And I look back on that and I think that was a really nice time, honestly, because I think before it's your job, you can really just throw things at the wall. And that's so much fun and so like depressurized.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just spending a lot of time. So my corporate job was still really busy. And then spending a lot of time creating things. So I would say I probably worked like 8 to 10 hours a day at my corporate job, and then probably was spending like 4 to 5 hours a day on social media stuff.
Was it easy, though, to do that much work because you were just so craving to work on the social media? Or was it at times like, wow, my head is going to explode. I cannot do both of these things?
No, I would say it was easy. I was so like laser focused and passionate about it. And I've always been like that. I've always had my little internet ventures since I was a child. Like when I was in high school, I had a YouTube channel that was my pride and joy, that I was obsessed with, that I would spend every moment like compulsively promoting in whatever little ways.
Does it still exist?
Oh, actually, it's funny. So that one was like there's layers to this. That one was my individual one, which I don't know. That one does not still exist. I deleted it in college because I thought it was embarrassing.
Ugh.
Isn't that a shame?
That is a shame.
Because it was in the early days of the internet where if you were on there, and it had like 10,000 followers, which that was a lot of followers back. It's still a lot of followers. Like, and it was my everything. The fact that I let being embarrassed, like random humans from my college that didn't even know me.
We need some YouTube people to like dig through the files, see if we can bring it back.
I know. I hope so. It was so cute. It was like a little beauty guru channel, which I don't know anything about.
Adorable.
But it was so cute. Like, it was my pride and joy. But I also had a YouTube channel with my best friend where we would do like little Hannah Montana music videos, that type of thing. And funny enough, every now and then I will get a DM from someone who has seen those YouTube videos, because that one does still exist.
Okay. We got to bring that up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's so
fun.
Sweet.
If you're wondering what I was like in high school.
Well, and
making
it makes
videos
sense. So like, it sounds like you had that desire when you were younger. And then it sounds like college and onward, you were embarrassed by it, got rid of it, were not devoting attention to it, and then you kind of rediscovered it later on.
Definitely.
So I want to know about poetry specifically, and when you got into this, because for me it's funny, I will literally go sometimes to your page and I know I've seen the videos, and I will go and I will find a particular video that I've already seen, and I will watch it again and play it back like a song, like somebody would listen to a song again because you enjoyed it. And I was thinking about that and what I wanted to ask you, and I was like, what creates that? That it's magnetic. It makes me feel seen. It makes me feel heard. It makes me feel motivated, all the things. And I do really believe it is in the craft of the poetry, right? And in your delivery of it. But let's get into, just to start with, when did you realize that you enjoyed poetry and reading it and writing it?
Well, I think I've always enjoyed poetry. I've always loved to read, but I really started to get a dedicated interest in it when I was leaving my law firm around like 2021. I took a long trip by myself and spent so much time reading Mary Oliver and Walt Whitman and Rumi, and to this day those are my favorite poets. Those are like scripture texts to me. And so I think that's when I started to really love poetry. And in terms of my own writing and when I started doing that, I really don't know, because I think that during that phase when I was just creating like a fiend, I would never have said what I was making was poetry. I never would have said that. It
title,
would have even said art. I would have said content. That's what I would have said.
Yeah.
And I think that people on the internet started using the word poetry and writer. And so with time, I have owned that. But even now I feel self-conscious sometimes calling myself a poet, because I think the writing world is it can be such a purist place, and there can be some tension between people who got their start on social media versus other types of writers. And, sometimes I feel that makes me insecure, or I feel maybe what I'm doing is different than what more serious or more literary poets are doing. And so I still kind of struggle with that label. I like it. I would love the idea of I'm Victoria and I'm a poet, but I'm still working my way there.
Working your way on that.
Yeah.
And that makes sense too. And it's also in a way refreshing to hear that from you, because I think some people could look at what you've created and go, without a doubt, she obviously knows that she has made it as a poet, right? Or she has made it as a writer. So that's interesting to hear. When did you start exactly creating kind of the art form that I would call today your art form, which is this mixture of you, and some of the videos, of course, are you talking, but the videos are you specifically doing your yoga flow in the same flow, right? And I know I asked you about this the first time, so it's like it's the consistently the same flow with the reading of something different each and every time. Like, when did that concoction come together? And when did you notice, okay, this is it, like this is working, I'm going to continue to recreate this with different feelings behind it?
Well, I think on TikTok, it's all about multiple ways to be engaging. And I know that sounds so scrappy and not, good intentioned, but that's just the truth. Everybody is doing their makeup while they talk, or there's multiple things going on. And I enjoy that type of content. And so I started noticing that I found it interesting. And in particular, I think I remember seeing, like, do you know Whitney Simmons?
I'm not sure.
So she's like a gym, she'll like mic up in the gym and kind of like crack jokes while she lifts, and I loved Whitney Simmons. Yeah, it's like such, to this day I still love her content. And I found that super engaging, and I also found the people who would tell stories while they did their makeup super engaging. But I'm not good at doing my makeup, and I'm not a gym girly, and so I think that's kind of like thinking about drawing inspiration. Like, I definitely drew inspiration from those things, but then I had to think, okay, who am I and what do I bring to the table? Which, like, I'm a yoga practitioner, and I'm a big feeler with a lot of things to say around feelings. And so I started creating that way because of inspiration that I saw online, but also just thinking about kind of the different things that I like, which are yoga and poetry.
Yeah. Would you consider yourself to be extroverted or introverted?
Oh, it's such an interesting question. So I think I would have told you during my 20s that I was a big introvert, but I actually think I'm an extrovert. So when I was a child, I was like the most gregarious, boisterous, like loud child you ever could have met. And then I think throughout my 20s, I got like progressively more insecure, but also just like wrapped up in the identity of being like high performing at school and stuff. Like, I very much just stepped into a role that I, decided to try to be for years. And I think that throughout high school and college and law school, I got like progressively more, I wouldn't say introverted, because I think true introverts, it's not about insecurity. It's about like not gleaning well.
You get your energy.
Yeah, how you get your energy, exactly. And I think that I get a ton of energy from socializing. Like, when I come home from hanging out with someone, or like when I was single, a good date, or like I still have good dates with Roy, but it's different. It's different. Like,
I know what you mean.
You come home from like a really energizing, like social, meeting people and that sort of thing. I feel like I have taken drugs. You know what I mean? Like, I feel...
Yes, I know.
Manic. Like,
I know, because I was having conversations with my best friend like that last night, and we're like, neither of us could fall asleep afterwards. Totally. Because we're like, have you ever contemplated infinity and like what it's expanding into,
Right. And then you're just like, I'm sweating, I'm buzzing. Yeah, exactly. So I do think I'm an extrovert, but like when I was saying a moment ago that I feel like I've reconnected with parts of my personality, that's kind of what I mean, because I feel like I was just so bogged down in so many different ways in my 20s that what was really going on was like I was insecure and exhausted and just, trying to be so many different things at once that I was cagey. And, that's not the same thing as being an introvert. And Absolutely. I think that one of the most beautiful parts of my 30s so far has been breaking that down and coming out of my shell. And now I think...
Now you help other people do the same in a lot of ways, right? That's kind of like you had to go through that in order to then be able to share about it. I think that's like, you're like the big sister of the internet in a lot of ways, because I think just more and more, and I'm more or less this sort of person where I grew up with Instagram, right? I remember getting it in middle school. And I remember it being just like a very different place than it is today, and I think there's a lot more awareness coming to that. But what do you feel like caused you to get sucked in and bogged down? I know it could be 1,000 different things, but if you could kind of put your finger on like when you look back, why were you doing all of that? Like, why were you feeling those different pressures and essentially caging yourself in and losing touch, you know, to the extent you're losing touch with pieces of you, essentially?
I think that, well, number one, I'd say in your 20s, so many of us feel so much pressure to know. You know, we feel pressure to know what we're going to do with the rest of our lives. We feel pressure to know who we are. We feel pressure to know how our life is going to turn out romantically. And I think that is exhausting.
Yes.
And it can really weigh you down. So I think there was a lot of that general, who am I and what's going to happen to my life crisis. And I think that, and we might have talked about this the last time we talked, but when I was in high school, I was very much, I had a lot of my identity rooted around being good at school. And then I went to Columbia and I felt like the dumbest kid there. And that was so like upsetting to me because that was my whole thing. I felt like I didn't have anything else, you know? Yeah. And so I think that was really hard in college. And then when I got out of college and got to law school, I came out of the closet as bi, and that was super hard. And at the time I thought I was gay, or I was identifying as gay. And like, that was just an incredibly hard several years of my life. I'm so glad I went through that. In the end, it was the door that opened up everything. You know, I think that when you get honest with yourself about one very shame-laced thing that is deep, kind of everything starts coming out. Like that sparked this whole evolution of my spirituality and just bloomed who I am in so many important ways. Yeah. But yeah, it was very hard.
I can understand too in what you're saying where, you know, you can see in the long run that this was good, that I went through this and I took these steps. But on the other hand, you don't want to send other people into the same feelings of struggle that you had. I'm assuming that there is some pressure that comes in when you start to have the number of eyes on what you are saying that you do. So talk to me a little bit about how your experience of that pressure is when you go to share your messages that you want to share with the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with short form media of any type, it can be so hard to address these big topics because you want to give them the nuance that they deserve and the context that they deserve. And when you're talking about anything heavy, there's so many important caveats and disclaimers, and it's impossible to bake all that into a TikTok, you know? And so sometimes I feel, you know, I feel maybe, I don't know if pressure is the word, but I just feel responsible to try to do my best in that way.
And probably a healthy dose of that responsibility then creates a little bit of your messaging. I would ask you too, how much of what you're sharing is with your audience in mind, and how much of it is, oh, this is, you know, resonating for me. I'm just going to put it out there and see if anybody else feels the same.
I think, honestly, I do think about my audience a fair amount when I'm creating, which I think is very controversial as a creative person. I know that basically every teacher of any art form would tell you audience eats last. Like, that's such a bedrock of making art. Yeah. But here's the thing. Like, I think that people say that. Like, I'm thinking about Rick Rubin specifically. Do you know Rick Rubin?
I was just going to bring it up because he has this very popular quote, or at least in my mind it's popular because I think about it, where he says, the audience does not know what they want. They only know what's come before. And like, don't basically spend your time like trying to guess what they want.
Yes. Well, and he also says, like, I don't know if this is in the creative act or if it's elsewhere, but he says something like, I never think about what the audience wants.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, that's great for you, 8-time Grammy award-winning Rick Rubin. You know what I mean? Cool. Like, I think that's a good principle. And on the one hand, it's important to be able to close the door of thinking about your audience and what will be received and what will reach a lot of eyes. Because if you always have the audience in your head, like, you lose a sense of where your mind stops and where theirs starts. But I think we live in a time where so many people are trying to be career creatives. And I do not think there's any shame in thinking about what's going to do well. And I think that sometimes things like that are presented as new issues, like issues of the internet age, when really it's as old as time. Like, think about like people like in the 20s or whatever doing little jingles for radio, and then they're writing music that they love on the side. And I think, I don't know, I think there's no shame in that game. Like, we all got to eat, and sometimes you do have to think about that. And I think that art is an offering, you know? And so it's not a bad thing to think about the people that it's reaching. I think that that's a perfectly fine moral objective, to make art, to hope to like that it means something to someone or helps someone a little bit. I think that that's okay.
It's interesting because I had no idea how you were going to think on this topic. I really wasn't sure if it was if you were following kind of like the Rick Rubin philosophy on that. And I think, not to discount anything he says, because he says some really
I love him.
Yeah, like, I love his book too.
But yes.
But it is that kind of thing where it's interesting in this whole the moving from content creation to becoming an artist, because I think at a certain point, I would say, like, this is what I've seen go through and go on with you, you know, and I can see, and I see this with different people I interview, where you start out and you must think a lot about what will do well. And it's refreshing to hear you just say, like, yeah, there's no shame in that game. Like, you got to do that. But then you transition into like where you can throw anything out there, and people, they know you, they like you, they trust you, they're going to pay attention, they're going to listen, you know? And so, like, can we talk about starting route to Taco Bell, you know, and like when you created,
oh my gosh,
like that kind of stuff, and deciding to share those parts of you with people, you know? I don't know if you can recite for us the very short.
Oh my gosh, let me think. I have it. Hold on. It was like, roses are red, violets are swell, and then the GPS saying, starting route to Taco Bell.
You know how many people I've showed, like, look at this video. It's so funny because I love Taco Bell.
Same. Did you know, and this is maybe my proudest accomplishment to date, Taco Bell posted that on their Instagram story. They
did not.
I'm trying so hard to connect with Taco Bell. Taco Bell, if you see this, I love you.
Yes. Like, absolutely. It's a match made in heaven.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
What's your go-to order?
Okay. So I love a Crunchwrap Supreme. I'm vegetarian, so black bean Crunchwrap Supreme, nacho fries. I love the Cinnabon bites. Have you had those?
I have not.
Oh my God. And I love the cinnamon twists. Those are a classic. They've been there forever.
Yes, that I have had.
Have you had the grilled cheese burrito? I do the black bean grilled cheese burrito.
No, because I was always a double-decker girly, and now I'm a Crunchwrap Supreme girl.
Ooh.
Like, that's my...
What type of Crunchwrap Supreme do
I
you
like black bean. I'm not vegetarian, but I just enjoy it. And I literally think it tastes better. But I have tried it both ways many times. And honestly, the drive to Austin, one of the most exciting parts was like when I would see a Taco Bell and I'm like, yes, here we go. Get to have lunch.
And the worst, this is shameful. People are going to say I'm abusing Ruby, my dog, about this, but I get Ruby a soft chicken taco. And she knows, she knows the drive to Taco Bell, where we're pulling up to the drive-thru. She's so excited. She's like jumping through the window. So
that's so funny.
I don't give her the tortilla, just the chicken.
I love that. That's so funny. Okay, and about this, you know, your decision to share, because I feel like this is something that I've seen going on, and since the beginning of my time in the, you know, watching the yogis of Instagram, where it's this very curated thing. And not to say everybody does this, but there are sort of these boundaries in the same way that as a yoga instructor, you go to teach a class, you have in your mind when you first start, like, I must sound like a yogi, I must, you know, walk like a yogi, talk like a yogi. And then there's you, and I will see you like post a thing about Taco Bell. When did you decide that you were just gonna share those kinds of things? And did you worry that, oh, this isn't the kind of content that people are expecting from me?
it's still something that I navigate, I would say. Like, I definitely have started to share more of kind of my humanness outside of like my very, I think that on my actual feeds, getting really specific, like on my TikTok feed and my Instagram posts, I tend to be very focused on like adding value to the viewer. So like my art or my advice or whatever. And then on stories, I feel a little more comfortable just sharing my life. I would love to work to be more comfortable to share like pieces of just my life, not just in stories. I know that's so specific, but I do still kind of feel compelled to stay niched down or whatever that word is. And I think that like a lot of that comes from like as soon as you're a career content creator, your engagement does matter because it affects your rates with brands and stuff. And so you don't want to post things that like won't, and that's so candid, but that's just the truth.
It feels a little like you're trapped in a way, right?
Yes. And I think that it can feel like niching down, having a really specific thing you do can be so helpful to growth. But then you arrive at, you know, where you are and you have, it becomes a little bit of a cage, you know, I think. So I'm trying to work on that. And I think that a lot of it is in my head, but it's also much more vulnerable to share your life than it is to share like 20 things about.
But what you're sharing, and that's shocking to me because I do feel like in what you're sharing, when you say, you know, 20 things that I've learned and blah, 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 they hit deep, you know, like, but you don't feel that as vulnerable as sharing, okay, this is my day to day.
It's vulnerable in a different way. I think that usually when I'm sharing in that way, they're not things that I'm presently grappling with. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of reflections on different times in my life. And that's usually the case with like art as well, with poetry. It's not my current, when I'm posting a poem about losing someone, I haven't just lost them or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas your life is happening now, so feedback about it feels much more salient because it's like your actual here and now, you know what I mean? Even if it's smaller things.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I didn't know that. I wasn't sure if it was something that you are, you know, still currently working with, but it sounds like it's a little bit more like you've already gone through it.
For the most part. Yeah. Well, and not always. I think that, like, for example, sharing about body image, I'll struggle with my body image forever. That's a lifelong thing. And so certainly the pieces of advice that I give, I am not saying, well, these are things that I have perfected.
Mastered. Yes, I
definitely
understand.
not.
Yeah.
But they're, you know, for example, just sharing about kind of like things that have happened. It takes me a long time to like digest things that have happened to me into like some artistic output. It's not doesn't happen in the present. Like if I'm going through something sad, for example, while it's happening, I will feel just numb and for a while after. And then eventually I'll start to kind of view it through that lens.
And that's nice to hear too. Like if you are currently going through something, it's not like you are expected to turn around and like have some major breakthrough on it and be able to share that with the world.
Yes.
So that's nice to hear. I'm sure that there are sacrifices in having chosen to do this work that you're doing. Are there any that you can think of? And I mean it in choosing to show up online, choosing to share really honest things, authentic things that you feel?
Well, I think that any life that you choose has sacrifices, right? There's no such thing as a perfect life. I think it feels super vulnerable to be as online as I am. And like when I first started posting content, and for most people, when you first start doing it, it's kind of your secret space. And then as you grow, it's like every person you've ever worked with and every person you went to elementary school with. And that feels, getting on my stories and talking about depression or whatever feels really vulnerable. So I think, I don't know that I would say that's a sacrifice, but that's a hard thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sacrifice to have to make the mental space for that. Whereas if someone else is going through that, you know, you can just kind of like disappear. You don't need to go online, right? People aren't wondering where you are. And, yeah.
Yeah. But honestly, not much comes to mind. I think that and maybe it's just because I have like a mental filter of not wanting to seem like a whiny person. You know what I mean? That's something, I think maybe that's a thing that is hard, is that I have a million different perspectives in my brain at any given moment. You know what I mean? Like having, communicating with people at scale makes it where at any given point you're thinking about, oh, well, people are going to say this and people are going to say that. And you have like a million voices in your head all the time. But that's also a good thing. I think feedback is such a blessing. Like I have learned so much from people criticizing things. Like there's so many perspectives that you don't have. And it's a blessing to have access to lots of different people's thoughts and perspectives on things. It really is a mind opener, and you can learn so much from it if you don't perceive it as an attack, you know?
Completely. Let me phrase it this way. What do you feel like about your work and your life you're still trying to find balance in?
Okay. I think that there's such a lack of structure with being self-employed in any way, and definitely being a content creator. And I really struggle with that. Like I am still struggling to find a routine that feels good. And I think that like when I left my job, I thought I had such a little plan. Like I think at least I as a content creator have lots of different irons in the fire. And so when I left my job, I think I thought like, oh, I'm going to do my app on Monday, and on Tuesdays I'm going to film for social media, and on Wednesdays I'm going to write my manuscript, and you know, I had such a plan. And that is not at all what my experience has been. At any given point in the past year, I've been completely consumed by one thing, you know, whether it was my manuscript because I had a deadline, or I'm working on a new program for my app, or like
you right now work on that the whole week, essentially is what you're saying.
Yeah, or like this week it's like it's the holidays, so there's like a lot of brand work, you know, and so I've just been completely consumed by that this week, and I haven't had time to write as much, and so I'm really struggling with that. But I'm also trying to, I think that sometimes balance and the need for balance is just another yardstick that we use to tell ourselves we're failing, you know? And maybe it's okay to be consumed by something because you love it and it's pressing in your life. And so I'm trying to embrace that, embrace the lack of sameness of that. I think I've been very wired, you know, anyone who has worked a corporate job is wired to feel like you should have a like what your day-to-day looks like.
Yes.
That hasn't
or some sort of like rhyme or reason about when you're doing things and why you are in a routine.
Exactly. So that's been something that I've struggled with. And I think I just struggle to like focus. It's so much easier to focus when you have coworkers and stuff sometimes they feel a little bit out on an island.
I know. I feel on a different island, but on my own island.
What is that experience like for you? I'm curious.
I think just being so torn between worlds, between the podcasting world and also not really feeling like I'm much of like in the yoga Instagram world, but I kind of am. It's like I am on my own in that sense because I don't have another, you know, yogi friend who is after the podcasting and in love with it like I am, you know? But I find that there's lots of people who are curious and who want to step up and to learn about podcasting. And I find a nice community there for sure. So it's nice. You can always find other people to invite onto your island or to go and to visit theirs. And it can be very enlightening for sure.
Totally. And it means you're doing your own thing, which is such an amazing thing. And there's a freedom in being on an island. Like, but that makes perfect sense to me. And I feel the same to an extent. I feel stretched between like kind of not a perfect fit in the poetry world. Like when we were pitching my book, feedback that we would get from publishers would be, you know, we're worried that her audience is there for her yoga. You know what I mean? That type of thing.
Absolutely not. I can tell that publisher right now. That's absolutely incorrect.
Because I do the same flow every single day. So, but anyway, but like not being a perfect fit there. And then also in the yoga world, I'm not you know what I mean? Like, I totally relate to that a lot.
And I think that's the magic in like the uniqueness of the concoction for sure. What did you say that you wanted to be when you were little? What did you dream about doing with your days when you were little?
Well, so like I said, I have always had my little internet ventures from a very young age. I was in like elementary or middle school, I think, when I started trying to do things like that. So that was something. But I really wanted to be an actor. I did theater, but I was not good. Like I think I'm maybe a decent actor, but I'm not a good singer at all. And I'm a pretty good well, not like a great dancer, but like I could get by. But I'm not a good singer, which is very important for
the theater world.
Community theater is very important. But I loved community theater, and I wanted to be an actor. I think I always just wanted to do something creative. I did write poetry, and I had like, this is dating myself, but have you heard of Zynga? Do you know Zynga?
I don't.
It was like early days of the internet. It was a blog website, and I used to make layouts for Zynga, which was like kind of like very crude web design. Like,
okay.
I loved that.
Okay.
That was a passion of mine, and then quickly got on the YouTube. But I think that, I think I just always wanted to do something creative. But I loved acting. I wanted to go, until I was probably like a freshman in college, I wanted to go to NYU and I wanted to go to Tisch. And then I very quickly learned like that was not possible for me because I am not a good singer, and it's like such a prestigious program. And when I was a sophomore in college, we went to New York and we visited NYU because I was still thinking maybe I just like wanted to go to NYU generally.
Yeah.
And I visited Columbia in the same visit, and I think like during that trip, I switched over to like, I want to do something creative to, I just want to do really well in school and I'll do whatever, you know?
Do you feel like it was because it was like, that's the sure shot?
Yeah.
Like you felt like you could grasp it?
100%. It was because I did not feel that doing something creative was like attainable for me. I did not believe in my ability to be successful at it. And so I saw much more probability that I would be able to be successful taking a different route. That was 100% what it was.
Yeah, which is relatable, I feel like, to a lot of us in many ways. Do you think that acting is in your future?
No, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I feel like a lot of people, though, will look at you and just see how you are able to deliver these lines. I mean, you're delivering your own lines, which is even more badass. So
thanks.
But I know, like, at certain points, even the way that you end your the way that you end your clips in your reels, you'll just like look the camera in the eye, and it just brings an air of confidence. And so I wanted to ask you, where does this confidence come from? Like, what is your journey with confidence in your ability to express been for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that, as we've talked about, I went through a really insecure time in my 20s. And I think that what got me out of that, and it's not to say I'm the most confident person in the world by any means, because I am not, but I think that I am in a phase where I am thinking about values and traits as actions, and not feelings. And what I mean by that is like with confidence, like you've probably heard the question about courage, like who's more courageous, the person who is not afraid versus the person who is afraid but like does it anyway, right? And I would say the second person is more courageous, right? Because like courage is acting in the face of fear, right? Yes. Likewise, with confidence, I have come to define confidence and think about confidence and practice confidence as not trying to get rid of my insecurities, but rather trying to not let them drive my life,
Yes.
And that's such a more doable thing. It's such a more doable thing to practice confidence rather than try to be confident, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's been so helpful for me.
Yeah. I love how you have reframed that, where it's not make all the problems and fix everything, right? I feel, especially in the wellness world, there is like this idea that something about us is broken and it must be made better. And as you're saying, some of it doesn't need to be changed at all. It's rather about just moving forward with it as it is. And it's not despite those imperfections, but because of them, that people will find you relatable and will find you magnetic in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I just think, we live in a world that, unfortunately, especially with women, has a financial interest in you hating yourself. Like, that messaging comes every day and it will forever. And so it's such an unrealistic thing to say. You know, I think that sometimes, as much as I'm in the self-love space and I'm all about self-love, like, it's an impossible standard that we add on top of, like, everything else. You know what I mean? Like, love, I'm thinking about body right now. So, for example, like, you know, don't, just the impossibleness of, and you have to, like, love your body, not just accept it, not just, I don't know. I just think that's a really impossible thing. And it's so much easier to say, this messaging is going to get under my skin. I am going to have insecurities about my appearance, about my personality, about many things about myself. And to an extent, is what it is. But what I control is whether I let those things control what I do. And I do find that the less you listen to fears or insecurities, the less, like, prominent in your mind they become. Like, I think about when I was a child, I was terrified of needles, like, to the point where I had to be physically restrained to even get a finger prick. And I will never forget the first time it occurred to me, I don't have to listen to that fear. Like, I can, like, feel it and not move my body and just sit there, and I'm going to cry, but I'm not going to try to run out of the room like I'm 17 years old. Like, it's time.
Okay, I have that in common with you too, because same thing. If I knew I was going to get my blood drawn, like, I couldn't sleep for 2 days before. So I understand. And I think what you're saying is that same thing within kind of what yoga teaches us. Like, you're not your thoughts, you're the seer, the watcher of them.
Yes.
You know, with your fears, you are the same. You are not your fears. You're not bound by them to react without thinking. So I like that example.
Exactly. And the same with your insecurities. Like, I love, do you know Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor?
Yes, I love his books.
Same. And I love his quote, like, in between stimulus and response, there is space, right? That's it's a life-changing sentence.
It is.
And it applies to confidence, your insecurities. In between noticing you're feeling insecure and what you do about it, there's space. In between your fear and how you decide to proceed, there's space. You know, that's a life-changing thing.
That is, yeah. And the fact that he is able to put it into those words too, in such. And that's where I think we come back to this idea of, like, wow, words and the things that we're able to say, because you can hear something said 1,000 times. Same within a yoga class. You may hear something said by a dozen different teachers, and then one day it just hits you because finally it was said in a way that it lands. And so I wanted to ask you, you know, how do you find your words? Because I will hear you say things like, even when I was in the process of moving from my hometown to here to Austin, I remembered one of your videos that was like, it was a town that felt like 4th grade shoes on 5th grade feet, you know, and the lines like that just hits you and you're like, yes, like, that is exactly what I'm saying. You know, how do you find your words? Like, how do you feel like, you know, when do they come to you? I guess I'm asking basically, what is your creative process like?
Yeah. So I think that it's different at different times. I think on the one hand, you know, we've all had light bulb moments, like in the shower or on a walk. And those are the best, when you just, like, have a great idea and it just floods out of you. Yeah. It's definitely not always the case with me. I love that experience. But I think that when I'm intentionally, like, setting out to create, I think it's mostly like, and this is going to sound like such an unsatisfying answer, but I'll explain. There's so much power in just showing up consistently. Like, Mary Oliver has a poetry handbook. The poet Mary Oliver. I
know her.
You know her, but everybody knows Mary Oliver. What am I talking about? But she has a poetry handbook where she talks about like the creative process, and she says she describes the creative process as a courtship between the wild, silky part of the heart and the mind. And I love that. And she goes on to say that basically like any other courtship, there has to be consistency. So like that spark, that ineffable thing that is at the heart of all art, you have to honor your appointments with it. And she says like, you know, if you say you're going to show up every day at 7 to write, and you tell this wild, silky part of your heart, your spark, that you will, and you show up, it will start to show up.
Yeah.
And it will start to show up when you do. But if you don't, if you come sometimes, you don't other times, you're late, you're distracted, it won't show up. And for me, that has rung so true. Like so often I think I have no ideas or I have nothing creative to say. And what is really going on is I am just not giving myself a moment of real presence and space. Like this is going to seem like such a tangent. I promise I have a point.
I'm here to listen to all the tangents, so go for it.
Okay. So I went camping, or it's not actually camping. I went to like a, have you heard of Getaway? They just changed their name to Postcard Cabins.
Yes, I've seen it because of you.
Okay. So I went to Getaway with a couple friends a few months ago, and my friend Amy she was going to handle like making the fire, like bringing all the fire stuff. And I was really nervous about that because I'm a control freak and I have always struggled with making the fire when I go by myself. So it's kind of like, okay, but like, did you get extra lighter fluid? And did you, I was just trying to make sure that we were going to have everything that we needed, because I've really struggled trying to make a fire when I go by myself. And she didn't really have as much like lighter fluid and stuff as I typically would bring. And we're like, okay, like you got the fire, I guess, like whatever. And we get there, and right away she sets up this beautiful fire with like way fewer, like just the logs and like, a little bit of, and she says, fire just needs room to breathe. And it turns out I had been, not me apologizing to the mic. It turns out I had been like setting up the fire wrong, and really I had everything I needed and more, but I just wasn't giving it the space, room to breathe. And I think that's such a metaphor for like, it made such an impact on me in the moment, because I think when it comes to creativity and trying to create, so often I think I need more inspiration. I need to like look at TikToks, and I need to read books to try to like get an idea going. And really, everything I need is already in my mind. I already have everything I need in my mind, but I'm not giving myself space to breathe. I'm not giving anything that's going on in my mind room to breathe and fester. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, because I think we get caught up a lot in information overload,
Totally.
And it can totally suffocate us. And it can take away your capacity to have any of those mental processes.
Totally. And it's like with the fire, it wasn't working because I'm loading it up with all this stuff in it when it really, exactly.
It is the more is less sort of concept as well. Yeah. But I love that. It just needs room to breathe.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's a whole poem.
That's powerful.
Right?
I love that. Great insight.
And it was a long story to tell that.
No, it's worth it though. And I think stories are so powerful because that's the thing that we're going to remember. So hopefully if you're listening, you can remember this about the fire if you're feeling that frustration. How about after you've created something that is done really, really well and you're like, great, this was a massive success. Now what? How do I follow this up?
Yes. That's such a struggle. And I think that all of the apps are engineered to like get us psychologically invested in that struggle. You know what I mean? Like that's the whole, it's like that study with the rats where it's like if they ring the bell and they get a pellet sometimes, like they're way more interested in the bell than if they ring the bell and they get a pellet every time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? I think that's how the internet works on my brain. Like it's so, you get so much more invested when it doesn't work every time. That's a tough thing. I think that I think kind of goes back to what we were saying of like having the audience in mind, but not being able to close the door of how you value your art and of course yourself relative to how things are being received. And so I try really hard to, while I do keep the audience in mind sometimes when I create things, if I love something and it flops, I try to not love it less for that reason, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
But I do think, I think that's a hard thing. It's a hard thing. I don't
come back.
Yeah.
But I think also too understanding, even using the rat analogy I love because it just remember what's actually happening here.
Totally.
Right?
And it's so intentional. They're doing that.
It's not a
purpose.
random thing.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Right. And I think that sometimes after something does really well, at least I feel afraid to post because then you feel like, oh, there's new people here who came from that and that was so good or whatever, you know, then you're scared to just put out something regular after and then have them be like, oh, well, okay, I guess this is, you know. But I think that's sort of like, that's such a human thing that applies to everyone, regardless of whether you're a creative or someone who posts on the internet. It's like dating, you know, you're wearing, first day you're wearing your best outfit, you're not showing any of your mental illness or whatever. And then eventually they're going to find out who you are actually, you know? And so you have to just kind of keep it pushing and know that people online and in the real world, if they were ever going to be for you, then they, you know, either they like you or they don't, and you can't like hide your less good parts or art or anything.
Yeah, you can't be for everybody.
Exactly.
Trying to do that will be for nobody because you're not really, you're so restrained. So that makes sense. How about when, you know, you hear in cases that people are taking inspiration from you and they're starting to do their own thing, you know? I think a lot we hear that imitation is the sort of enemy of imagination and like real creativity. But in some way there is imitation and we're all drawing inspiration just from synthesizing what we see and what we perceive. So what is your thought on inspiration versus imitation?
Well, I think when it comes to people, you know, drawing inspiration from me, I'm all about it. I think it's incredible and it makes me happy and it's almost impossible to step on my toes in that way. You know what I mean? Like there's almost nothing I could see where I'd be like, you copy me. Like I think that's, I get confused, frankly, when a quote unquote influencer, you copied my outfit. You're an influencer. Isn't that the point? You know what I mean? Isn't that the point, to influence? And of course, like there's a line, and I think the line is honesty, you know, like we don't want to steal things from people. But for the most part, I think it's such a beautiful thing to inspire people. That's the point of art to an extent, you know, that's a big point of art. So I'm all about it. I love it. It's very, very hard to bother me in that way. With my own art, like of course, I try to be aware of not, because I'm someone who, I'm very inspired by many other people. Almost every time I sit down to write, I start by reading my favorite poetry books, you know, very consciously, like drawing inspiration and seeing what's landing with me emotionally that day. So I do think, and especially when you're monetizing your art, like it's super important to be mindful. But I will say that, like, I think it's so hard to know for sure that someone is drawing inspiration from you, because I think that often, like, there are ideas and mediums and formats that are just floating around in the culture, and it's entirely possible that, like, you and that person just kind of landed on the same thing at the same time. Like, I saw there was a fashion creator that I saw made a post talking about how, like, she shared some very specific outfit, like a very unique and specific outfit. And then the next day, some big designer, like Mark, I don't know, some big designer shared a campaign that was like almost exactly the same outfit. And she was saying that like, well, obviously they didn't copy me because like these campaigns take months to come together. And it just goes to show that like concepts are like floating in the collective consciousness. And like, that's a fascinating and cool thing to like be a part of that tide if you're not receiving it as like, this person is copying me, I think that, I don't know, I'm very pro drawing inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you have a really abundance mindset about it, about the whole situation. And it's interesting because I wanted to ask you actually specifically about that because being, in the point in my career where I am met with a ton of people never giving me a chance, and I've met with a lot of like doors like slamming in your face. And what I've found is actually the people who have the most to lose and the most talent and the most abundance are the most generous people. And I wanted to ask, even in the way that you're sitting here with me right now, having this conversation, it's like,
get out of here. It's an honor to be
but
speaking
you know
with
what
you.
I'm saying, but why, what do you feel like has crafted this abundance mindset within you and understanding that, okay, there is enough for everybody. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not here trying to police if somebody is copying me or if, it feels, and you give off that that abundance mindset. And I think that in the yoga world, I was expecting to find a lot of that. And I don't necessarily always find that. So I wanted to ask you about where you think that came from, or if you even realize that that's kind of how you're being perceived, at least from me.
That's a beautiful compliment. First of all, thank you. And I don't feel there's any element of generosity in me sitting here with you today. I adore talking to you. I'm thrilled to be here. Also, this is so like professional and cool. This is just an incredible.
And we get to cold plunge and stuff.
I know we get to cold flake. Come on. But I do think that jealousy isn't something, or like lacking an abundance mindset. That's something that has come naturally to me for most of my life. And I think I have episodically felt like scarcity where there's genuine scarcity. Like, for example, you and a friend are going after a job and there's one job and there's two of you. That's a moment where I might feel like, cagey, or just
the competition like switches on.
Yes, I might feel some element of competition and would have to navigate that. But one of the beautiful things about like living in the 21st century is like, there's the whole world is your potential audience. So there's always enough to go around. There's always enough. Like, so I think that that's where that mindset comes from. This truly, no, you're not in competition with anyone. You're only like, it's so Chad, like raw eggs for breakfast, Rocky montage of me, but like, it's you versus you, that's it.
Yeah. I agree. And I think it's a constant reminder sometimes, because we can feel the old competitive nature coming out in us. And we need to be reminded that actually it's a really, really good sign when you see other people around you doing really well, or you see things that you admire. I'm a big proponent of the fact that what you admire is really a representative example of what is possible for you.
Yes, and what you're jealous of as well. Yes. Like, it is such a sign of what your heart wants. I have a folder on TikTok that, you can like save to folders, kind of like as Pinterest. I have a folder that I have titled "Love It for You and Want It for Me." And so it's like when I see something that, someone got something that I want, it's like, oh, let me write that down. It's like, you're showing me that this is possible. And it's even more so the case. Like, I think often the people we're the most inclined to feel jealous of are the people that we perceive as peers. Like, I'm not going to feel jealous of like, Selena Gomez or whoever, you know what I mean? Like some huge person that's just like a million miles above me in every element of success. I'm going to feel jealous of the person who's kind of like in my lane. Like that's the person that it is the easiest to feel jealous of. But I think they're also the person that when they achieve something that you really want to happen, they're really showing you it's possible for someone like you, for someone like you at your level, which is so inspiring, if you let it be, you know, like I think those people can be the most inspiring, and you should be celebrating when they get something you want, because they're showing you that it's possible for someone like you.
Exactly. Who would you say believed in you when you needed it, when you really needed it?
Well, do you mean as a creative or as a human being?
As a human.
As a human. Well, so when I was in my 20s, when I was really struggling, I had a whole little squad of people that watched out for me. Roy was in the mix there, and my best friend Sarah Adams, and my best friend Kelly, and my big sister Catherine. And yeah, I think those people really, like, I feel grateful to them for keeping an eye out for me, because I really needed it. Yeah. And I think that people like that are really important, like people that are just going to think anything you make is good because you made it. Like, thinking about creativity now, like I'm thinking about my best friend Sarah. She told someone, just like another person, like, Vic won't tell you this, but she's really good at singing. And I'm telling you, I'm not good at singing. Like,
maybe we need a demo to decide.
I'm not a good singer, but she just loves me and like believes in me and thinks things that I do are good because it's me, you know? And I think having people in your life like that, and there are so many people that I feel that way about, where it's just like you could, you know, write a phone book and I would read it and think it was amazing because you're you, and I know your heart and I know your soul, and like, you know, I think people like that are super important.
Yes, they are. They are such a blessing, such a blessing. And I know that you've mentioned before too, you've mentioned God and a belief in God. And I was curious, like, how does your faith play also a role in feeling that sense of like believing, you know, in yourself? Like, how does your faith impact what you do, I guess?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question. So I grew up religious, Christian, Southern Baptist, and I have always been a really naturally spiritual person, I would say. Like, even as a child, I was super focused on, like, I had a ton of questions about God, and like, I remember, not to get morbid, like, I feel like every time I talk about God, I start talking about death. But I remember the first time as a child, like, it occurred to me that maybe heaven was, you know, not real, and that's not to say that's necessarily what I believe now, but I remember like waking my mom up in the middle of the night and like asking a million questions. Like, I was just very, very focused on God and you know, spirituality and purpose and mortality forever. And when I was in college, my academic environment in college was very confronting to my faith. Like, I took a lot of religious adjacent classes that did look at the Bible from like a really critical lens, and that was super hard for me to kind of have this like falling away of like this
at
thing.
The moment when you were already struggling as well with coming out too, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely. Coming out was a little later, but like definitely all of that was going on. Like, when I went to law school, that's really when my faith started to crumble. As I was coming out, they were definitely related. And I think that the journey back to spirituality has been so beautiful. Like, being a spiritual person on my own terms has been probably the biggest shift of the past several years, and it's just driven everything else in my life. I think that when I say God and when I talk and write about God, I am not referring to necessarily Judeo-Christian,
specific.
Like anthropomorphized being God. I'm more referring to kind of the collective force of like love and life that's in the world. And I think that rather than my notions of God informing my life, I let my notions of life inform my impressions of God, if that makes sense. Like, I believe in the God that I think will make me a better person. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, having kind of a pragmatic sense of spirituality, in the sense of, in my 20s, I spent so much time digging, looking for, like, what is the truth? What is, that Oprah?
The capital
what is the
T truth.
Yeah. What is the truth? Exactly. And lately, I'm much less focused on knowing the truth of the universe. I don't think it's possible. I don't think there is objective truth about, we will never like confirm breaking news. God is real or not real. Like, that will never happen, right? We have to make our own choices about that. And so I think that I personally choose to believe in purpose. I believe that we're connected to each other because I want it to be true. And because believing in that helps me move through the world in a more loving way. So I've chosen to believe in that. And it's entirely possible I'm not right. Maybe there's nothing out there. And I went through a big phase where I did think there was nothing out there. Like, we are just spinning on a rock in a void that doesn't care about us, and we are a blip. And that could be true, but it's terrifying. And I don't want to believe that's true. And so I move through the world as though I am loved by something greater than me, and we are connected to each other in a meaningful way, and the universe is rooting for us, and I hope it's true. But even if it's not, I'm glad that that's the way I moved through the world, because it made me better.
That's the way that you live. Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do you feel? Because in that moment where you felt like we're on a rock and nothing matters, and how you live, and you were living in that versus how you live now, what are kind of the main, like, how does that feel different just to be alive and just to be a human?
Yeah. Well, I think that, like, when you think about we're on a rock and nothing matters, to like optimistic nihilism, absurdist, that whole mindset, I think it can be freeing, but it also can be so self-focused. And that's certainly not to say that I think that everyone who doesn't have a sense of spirituality is self-focused, because there are many people who can stay rooted in togetherness and the collective good without believing in like a spiritual greater purpose of the world. But for me, and I think for many people, like, I love Nietzsche, the philosopher, and he writes about how most people without some type of spiritual framework, like, he was a massive critic of religion, but he did think that religion served an important social function in the sense that it, keeps people invested in each other. And I do believe that is true to an extent, and it doesn't need to be organized religion, but I do think having a sense of spirituality connects you to the world around you. And I think that I've noticed that since moving back towards like identifying as a spiritual person and choosing to believe in God and a sense of connectedness, that I do feel more invested in other people and more people focused, you know?
Yeah. And that's what I was getting at, and I was assuming was the case. Even with that, what do you feel like are some of, or maybe even just one of the big questions that you could stay up all night contemplating and just talking with a friend about, but never be able to solve?
Oh my gosh. There's so many. I mean, this is a really spirally one, but have you ever really gone down the rabbit hole related to free will?
Yeah.
Don't get me started about
we won't.
Free will.
That'll be another episode, but I just wanted to know, okay, free will.
Yeah, that's a crazy thought spiral, because it really can have you thinking that like no element of your existence like belongs to you in a meaningful way. It's just like a function of your brain chemistry and your life circumstances, which is terrifying. That was a really negative example. Maybe to give a more positive example. Yeah, I'm super interested in afterlife. I think a lot about afterlife and what happens after we die. That was not a more positive example. Oh my God, that was.
But it can. Actually, you sparked my memory too, and I think we can transition into talking about make believe. You know, your poetry collection, your book that's coming out, because a lot of this is in there. But I read the one about we don't want to do spoilers, but about the surprise party. You know, and I was like, what a nice take. And I think that a lot of people are afraid to sort of address death, right? And address these bigger questions because it's like positive vibes only, you know? Don't think about it. But why do you feel like in your book, there's, to me, like it feels like it is addressed quite significantly, among other things, of course. But why, is it just because of your own personal interest, or what leads you, I guess, to want to share on this subject of afterlife?
Well, I think that our thoughts about what happens after we die, to an extent, like, control our lives. I think it's something that everyone is focused on. It's just a matter of how suppressed that is. We will all reckon with that at some point. It's the most human thing in the world. We're hardwired to want to survive. And I think that we live in a very death avoidant society in the West. Like, it's so pushed away in every part of how we live life. And I have personally found that not running from those questions and thoughts leads me to more peace than trying to A, not think about it, or B, act like I have the answer, and thinking about that poem, Death as a Surprise Party. I think that there's so much peace to be found in just embracing the mystery of it. We don't know. We don't know what happens after we die. And we all have our opinions, we all have our senses, but I think the most helpful thing and like beautiful thing we can do is be open to the surprise of it, whether we're conscious to experience it or whether we're exist in a different form that doesn't involve like thoughts. But I think that I think that at first that feels terrifying, and then the more you roll it over in your brain, it starts to seem a little beautiful.
Yeah. I think as well, it's interesting to contemplate why we do actually love surprises in a lot of ways, and we love adventure. And then it's like with that, we can't handle the not knowing, but sitting with the not knowing and sort of rolling it over in your mind is a beautiful practice for sure. The whole book, seems to be based on this idea of, okay, when we're born, we have this childlike joy and this, we believe in a lot of things, maybe believe in ourselves. And then at some point we kind of lose this, and then we can actually come back to that. So I was curious, from a high level in your own life, what are some of the things or major themes of those things, I guess, that you feel like when you were little, you believed in them, and at some point you lost touch, but now you've come back to finding them again?
Yeah. Well, I think that there are moments in our life, in our childhood and growing up, where we are taught overtly or implicitly that certain parts of us are bad, and that could be our body, that our body parts are bad. It could be elements of our sexuality. It could be our desire. It could be the way we think about the world and purpose and our questions about God. And I think that most of us can think of moments where we put some part of ourselves in a drawer because we learned that it was not lovable, it was not acceptable. And so I think make-believe at a really high level is a going back to visit moments like that and looking at them with more loving eyes. And I think there's so much power in that. Like, I think about how much childhood nostalgia and girlhood is like surging in culture right now.
Yes.
And I wrote make believe like in the Barbie movie times, which is not that far from now, but it was like extremely surging. And make-believe heavily incorporates themes of like childhood nostalgia, right?
Yes.
And I think that often with anything that is widely loved by women, it gets dismissed as like this very vapid thing. You know, it's like the pumpkin spice latte Ugg boots effect of like ways of thinking, you know? And I think that girlhood has been put in that bucket of like this, like just a silly little thing that, you know, we're focused on for whatever reason that's popular right now. But really, I think about the context of the pandemic and like this widespread reckoning that we've had as a world about like mortality and what we're doing here. And I think it makes perfect sense that following that, there would be a focus on thinking about our childhood and thinking about all the parts of ourselves that we've lost between then and now, and like questioning the merit of that. And I think many of us focus on our childhood, or when we think about our childhood, like there's this still quiet, deep part of us that knows that we were never meant to lose a lot of the things we lost, that we were born to accept ourselves and to experience wonder and joy and awe, and that these things were not things we were meant to set down, you know? And so I think make-believe is like an exploration of that idea and a going back and looking for all these things that we've set down.
Nostalgia is such an interesting thing, because I think the minute that you can realize, and like what your book opens the door for, is that that feeling of longing for that, what you had in your childhood, and in the moments of like joy and wonder that you experienced are not in the past and then done. It can be again emerging into your life, and you can open up the door again for those things. I mean, it's not going to be exactly the same, but I appreciate this idea of, can we learn to believe in ourselves again? You know, can it not be just a thing that was in our past and then is no more? And like we will never be with childlike joy again and wonder. But what do you think is the power in basically beginning to believe in ourselves again? You know, what happens in somebody's life when they're able to open up that door? Because I think sometimes it can be painful, right? Whether you had a very positive childhood or a difficult childhood, I think either way, that nostalgia can feel hard to face, and you would rather just not think about it or think about what was. But what happens in our lives when we're able to actually begin to believe in ourselves and to open that door?
Well, what's coming to mind hearing you say that is I'm thinking about, I'm sure you know Dr. Brene Brown, right?
Yes.
Have you heard what she says about how shame can't survive the light of day?
Yes.
I think that that's what we're doing when we go back and look at hard moments where we learned to abandon ourselves in some way, you know? When we go back and look with different eyes, often we find like there was nothing that was ever unlovable there.
And I like too that you use that example of that shame cannot survive the light of day, because I've heard it said in many different ways. Even in The Power of Now, I think they talk about shine the light there, and like suddenly the shadowy figure is no more. You know, it's not what you thought it was, essentially.
Totally. And I think that like there's things that we're ashamed of that there's power in going back to, and there's also just things that we think we know. You know, we get so set in all these things we think we know. Like there is a line in the title poem of Make Believe, maybe you're not old enough to believe in fairy tales again yet, or something like that. And it's a riff on this C.S. Lewis quote that's like, maybe you're not old enough to read fairy tales yet. So he's in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He dedicates that to his goddaughter. And it's super sweet because he's like writing to her, and he says, I wanted to dedicate this story to you, but little girls grow up faster than stories. And he says, you know, like, I'm still going to dedicate it to you because someday you'll be old enough to read fairy tales again.
Yeah.
Like, that brings a tear to my eye. That's just so sweet. But I think, like, when we go back and we look at all of these hardened rules that we learned and things we think we know, often I find the process of, like, learning something is you know nothing, then you think you know, then you learn you really, really don't know. And that's such a beautiful thing to, like, live in this world where you don't know, and you believe the world is full of mystery and surprises, and you're open to things being different than you think they are. It just totally changes the way you move through the world.
Yeah. And on this subject, too, of, like, purity and, like, the programming that we receive regarding our bodies and things, very similarly grew up with, you know, literally with a purity ring, right?
Same. True love waits, baby.
Yeah. So with all of that messaging, and it's been a big undoing for me. But I was curious regarding the body in general, because I do feel like, you know, I haven't gotten my way all the way through the book, but I have to tell you, it was a very sweet moment when I got to start to read little bits of it. I was sitting last night with my husband and my best friend, and we each, like, picked one and we read it out loud and we listened to it, and
that's super sweet.
It was special. But I want to know too, like, how much of it is your own story and how much of it are you kind of writing for your audience? You know, back to this discussion that we had in the first part of recording this, where we're talking, you know, you're thinking about your audience when you post your reels. Was it kind of the same process in the book, or was it a bit different?
I think that, especially when it comes to the book, and for the most part with everything I share, there are things that I have felt and experienced at some point in time, you know? So I write with past versions of me in mind a lot. And in that, I think other people who are in different phases of life or different phases of a romantic relationship or, you know, things like that will relate. But I would say everything in the book, to an extent, is my story and rooted in my experiences.
Yeah. What do you feel like, if anything, about that is the most vulnerable in what you've put in to make believe?
I think that I still struggle. I really try to not share about where other people have touched my story. You know what I mean? Like, I try to not talk about, I'm a very open person. Clearly, I just talked about childhood masturbation, you know, but, like, not everyone is, and not everyone in my life is. And so I think that I struggle a lot with, you know, not disclosing other people's life that did not choose to air out their whole life. You know, I think that's a very vulnerable thing. And there are, like, I feel nervous about that, thinking about it coming into the world. Like, I don't know. It's so important to me to respect the people in my life. And that can be a tough thing about sharing, if that makes sense.
Is it weird for you to think about, I mean, anybody can read this book, and I mean, family, I mean, people from high school, anybody.
Yes. It's if anyone is listening to this who knows me in real life, like, do not take this the wrong way, but it's so vulnerable when it's like, you know, your mom's friend who's 70 be like, just pre-ordered your book, and it's like, holy shit, yeah, like, geez, oh my god, like, which is, it's so kind, and it makes me so happy and feel so loved and held to have support of people that I know. But oh my god, yes, it's terrifying to think about people that you know reading super personal things about your sexuality or, like, the childhood masturbation or whatever it may be. Like, it's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But I do think a really beautiful thing about that is, like, because I do overshare, I learn really personal things about people who I barely know, like people I went to law school with or elementary school with. They'll message me and tell me,
because they'll share in return.
Exactly. Like, they'll share in return, where it's like, we barely even crossed paths. I never would have known we, like, shared this struggle, whatever it may be, you know?
Yeah.
And when you are open, other people are open in return, which is really, really beautiful and cool. And there have been so many things where it's like, wow, I did not think you would like relate to that. And it highlights my own assumptions about people and stuff all the time, where it's just like, oh, I never would have thought that would have resonated with you, which is a very cool thing. Like, I think that I've learned so much to just know I don't know about people, like what they're struggling with, what they're, who they are at their core. Like, we really have no idea what people are going through or, you know, what experiences they may have had. And that's a really important thing to remember, and like just a good
I completely agree with you. Do you feel like within Make Believe you have a stand out poem or couple handful of them that are just your all-time favorites, that you're like, yes, this one is it, like this is what it's about?
The first one that's coming to mind is a poem called Map Says You Are Here, which is in the like purpose and spirituality section of it. And it's one like I have agreed to not ever share a certain percentage of the poems. It's some of my favorite ones.
And you want to release it so bad.
My favorite ones. Like, I want to, And so I don't know if I will choose that one, because I do feel like I want to leave some of it to share for just people who read the book. But I love that poem. It's about the idea of kind of heaven and the things we're seeking spiritually being in the here and now. And like this idea of like going out spiritually, looking for heaven and purpose and God, and then coming home and realizing, oh, it was all right here.
Yeah. Ooh, that gives me chills. I agree. I feel like there's a certain beauty in sharing things widely, but there's also a certain beauty in keeping that for the people who really, really want to read it and will value it and be able to soak that in. I feel like one of my favorites so far that I read was actually the one that my husband picked out of like just in reading the poems, and it was the Let Me Let You Go, because I wasn't familiar with that phrase. And so when I read that title, I was like, oh my gosh, I did not think that the message behind it would be actually what it was, but it's very, very sweet. So no spoilers, but I did want to ask if you had a favorite for sure.
Anyone who is listening who is Southern, you know the phrase "Let me let you go." Probably it's like a very, very common Southern woman thing. I was raised on that phrase, but I do love that poem. I'm excited to share that one with my family, like with my aunts and just my mom, and my mom has read it, but like the women in my life who I grew up around with them saying that a million times
created that
a day.
Memory with you. Yeah, that's really, really, really powerful. How does it feel to know that much of what you're creating, people are just coming to you like, oh my gosh, like feels like it was created for me. I feel so seen. I feel so held by what you've created. What does that feel like when you get that sort of feedback?
I think that it makes me feel less alone, I think sometimes I feel like I'm sharing about the most off-the-wall niche thing, and so it just makes me feel less alone in my experiences and things I struggle with and things I grapple with. That's a beautiful thing to like be able to relate to each other in that way. That's my favorite thing about sharing, is just hearing that it made someone feel less alone. And it's very fascinating how at our core we are struggling with the same things. Like almost anybody, you can boil it down and we're struggling with very similar things a lot of the time.
Talk to me about dreaming up the book, because I know and I believe that you shared at some point that you would write and you would affirm, I am an author. I am a Penguin author. And now you are, So where does the seed of the book come from?
Yeah. So I started working with my social media managers in April of last year. And one of the first things they had me do was like write a list of my long-term goals creatively. And I remember I was rolling around in my mind at that point that I might like to write a poetry book, but it felt so ridiculous to admit it. Like I put it as the last thing on the list. Like I did not know them at all at the time. So it just felt so vulnerable. Like this is such a pipe dream and I'm sure it's years in the future. And
just like excusing
it
away.
Just a million caveats away. But like maybe I'd like to write a poetry book. And so that was April 2023. And
wow.
And so then, and I was sharing kind of like poetry adjacent things at that time. And not too long after that, I started to hear from publishers who had like seen my social media, which was super cool. And I was extremely excited about it. This is a little bit of like inside scoop on the publishing industry, because there's lots of ways to get taken advantage of. And so I got on calls with a few publishers, big publishers, and basically I did not end up signing any of those deals, and it was absolutely for the best. And this is, I'm thinking about your question of who believed in me, because I had a very new friend at the time, my friend Bree, who I saw that she had recently, like she had announced that she was publishing a revised and expanded version of her poetry book, Good Grief, with HarperCollins, which it's amazing. If you like poetry, you will love it. Go download, buy, consume Good Grief. It's incredible. I saw she had done that, and I did not know her at all at the time, but I was hearing from these publishers and not knowing what was normal in terms of like the contracts and like the kind of commercial elements of things. And I did reach out to her, which I felt so worried about doing that at the time, because it's like when you first connected with someone, you don't want to seem like, let me immediately just try to get information out of you. You know, that seems, I don't know, just slimy to me. But I really I didn't know any writers, and I had no idea what was normal. And she ended up saying, don't sign those, like don't sign those. And she connected me with her literary agent, and from there I put together a book proposal. So that's when like my actual book started coming to life, because those initial reach outs, it was very much like, we have a concept, we have a title, we want to like, we'll just take your poems from social media and we want to make it a book type thing. But writing my book proposal, I got to really write the book I wanted to write, you know, which was so special. And I'm so glad, I'm so proud of the book, honestly. And I'm just so glad that it landed in the hands that it did. My imprint, which is like a division of a publisher, basically. Convergent, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. So my affirmations, 2021 Victoria, all the times you wrote that in your journal. Thanks, girl. My imprint, I was a little like hesitant about going with them at first, because they are like a spirituality focused imprint, and specifically they're like Christian adjacent thought focused, which it felt really important to me to not feel tethered to talking about God in a, you know, Christian way. And also my book just isn't fully spiritually focused. There's a lot more, you know, that's one part of the book. So I wasn't sure whether it was the right place for my book. And we actually initially told them no. Like, we told them no. And I had in my gut just like a sense that I'd made the wrong choice. So I called Steve and said, like, Steve, I think that was the wrong choice. Like, I really want to talk to them. And I just thank God that I did that, because like it was the perfect place for my book. And like I could cry just thinking about how like I could cry. I'm just I could not have written the book that I wrote anywhere else. And like my editor was so invested in me, and like yeah, it was absolutely the right thing. Yeah. And it just feels like, I don't know, I'm just super grateful. I'm super grateful. I'm super proud of the book. I'm trying not to apologize for crying. I'm such a crier. But I'm grateful. It's such a dream come true.
Yeah. I feel it too. I'm really secondhand cry for you.
I'm such a crybaby.
It just feels like, too, how beautiful it is that the right people came around at the right time. Even your friend who is like, no, here you go, like, go think about this. And then, and it's like as if you were guided, and now this thing is here. So, yeah.
And it's like, looking back on that type of trajectory, it's like terrifying. I know how it ends, so it's good, but there's so many junctures where it could have gone so incredibly wrong. And maybe in a parallel universe, like, I made different choices and I'm still sitting there happy and whatever, but like, I'm so glad I'm so glad it turned out the way it did. So it was such a beautiful and vulnerable process writing the book. And I learned so much about myself, and I learned so much about writing. And it was just great. Yeah.
I feel like sitting in your presence as you talk about this, like, I can feel the energy and the joy, and also the not knowing, and the, all of it. It's raw. It's,
Yeah. It just, like, it means the world to me.
Yeah. What do you hope that people will feel after reading it?
I hope that they will feel, if there is one poem that inspires them to take a look at one part of themselves, that they have unfairly put in a box, that would be a win, Yeah. I hope that it makes them just see themselves with a little bit of kinder eyes, and also realize that they have control over how they see the world, And I think that, like, thinking about one part of the book we haven't talked about much is kind of like the mental health section of it. And I think that if you are someone who is really struggling with your mental health and struggling with finding hope, there's so much messaging out there that makes it so much worse, like, you just have to remember your purpose and that sort of thing. And like, when you're really struggling, you feel so numb to all of that. At least I did. And so I think that writing make-believe from a future vantage point where I'm doing better, I hope maybe that inspires someone to see that possibility for the future for them.
Yeah. I feel like I just want to know from you too, if there's anything else that you want people to know about make-believe. It's okay if not, but
no, I think it's different. If you know me from the internet, it's different. And it shows different sides of myself. But I think that, and this is not what, like, I should be saying from a marketing perspective, but regardless of whether you read it, I'm just so grateful to anyone who has ever, like, interacted with me in any way, or, like, been there at any point in the process to hear, because, like, I'm so aware that book would not exist without the internet, and I'm so grateful. Like, it just changed my life, so I'm just super, super grateful. And I hope you like it. The people-pleasing part of me hopes you like it if you read it.
Do you feel like writing the book was another turning point for you, where you were, like, really taking yourself seriously and saying, yes, like this is my path? Like, was it a turning point like that for you?
Definitely. Well, I think, let me say yes and no, because I think it brought up insecurity related to taking myself seriously, because it's a very different world than the social media world. Like a current little melodrama I'm having related to the book, because we're filming this. I know this will come out later, but we're writing to you from the past, is whether or not to put my social media handle on the cover, which like the publisher says can be very helpful. And I feel very resistant to that because I feel like I want to be taken seriously as a writer, and I don't want, I don't know. I just feel some little element of insecurity about that. But I'm trying to tell myself, like, no, that is the whole reason
you also created it. Yeah.
Exists. Like, why would you not want to put that on there? So I think it's brought up a new frontier of taking myself seriously, I will say. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us about Make Believe. And it's really cool to get the behind the scenes scoop on it. And before I kind of transition us away and just into a few general questions, I wanted to know if there's anything else that, you want to share regarding it. And if not, then that's okay.
I don't think so. I think you did an amazing job. You asked great questions. Thank you so much for being so thoughtful.
I'm glad you feel that way, because I feel like I threw out a lot of like the questions I was thinking about asking, because of course it's different when you actually hear about it. So that's really beautiful. People really love to hear this question, and I don't know if you are a writer in the morning, and that would be related to the book, but what do your mornings look like? Are you like a morning rituals person? Are you a totally spontaneous, do what I feel like morning person? Like, what do your mornings generally look like?
Well, so I am really trying to cultivate structure right now. And so I joined a gym near my house, and I have been going to like group fitness classes there really early in the morning, like 6 a.m., even though there's no need for me to do that. Like, I don't have a job that demands that. But I just feel like I am better mentally when I have a lot of structure. Yeah. So I don't go every day, but I'll go 2 or 3 times a week, I would say. So first thing in the morning when I wake up. And on the other mornings, what I'm trying to do is wake up and write first thing in the morning before anything else kind of has my attention. That's in a perfect world. It definitely doesn't always happen. Sometimes I sleep late, but I would say that's my weekday morning routine. And I do try to have like clear delineation between the weekends and the weekdays, because I feel like that's helpful if you're self-employed for kind of just like having a work day. I'm really trying to do that. And I think that your mornings kind of decide whether that's going to be a day where you actually live that. But yeah, I'm a big coffee girl. I have coffee first thing in the morning. I'm not a big breakfast person, so I don't usually eat right when I wake up. So I just like take my dog for a walk. I take her to, just this park in Houston. That's what my mornings look like.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm a coffee person too.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie.
Are you black? It's not that there's any moral hierarchy of the coffee, but how do you drink it?
I am a black coffee person. Same. Is that, I don't know the moral hierarchy.
So basically we're better than everyone else is what I heard.
I love it. Do you have any moonshot visions that you can share with us, or ideas of things that might be coming down the pipeline?
I do have things coming down the pipeline that I'm really excited about. I think they'll be in the world by the time this comes out, but I do have a product that is making its way into the world. Okay. So I'm super excited about that, and that's been taking a ton of my time and energy, and it's just been a joy. I'm so excited about that. And in terms of moonshot things that are not at all in the world yet, or I'm not at all working on, I had a thought a couple weeks ago that, and this may never happen, but that I would love to do not like a retreat, but like a summer camp for adults that exists like 1 week in the summer. Wouldn't that be so fun?
Yes, with big kids summer camp.
Yes, like a big kid summer camp. I think that would be...
I feel like that goes with make-believe as well.
It definitely goes with make-believe. Wouldn't that be amazing? Just like games, and you could have a talent show, you could have a dance. I think it would be best, now that we're planning this out, I think it would be best sober, though, because I wouldn't want it to be like a drunken party. No. That's not what I mean at all.
It has to be summer camp, summer camp vibes.
Wholesome, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's really sweet. What, in your opinion, makes an exceptional leader? What are qualities of an exceptional leader?
I think that being a good listener is a really important thing to being a leader. And I think that being an advocate for anyone that you work with in your capacity as a leader is super important. Like, I'm thinking about my boss at my in-house job, and I thought she was just the best boss. I loved her, Deanna. And she was just a fierce advocate for everybody on her team. And I think that's super important, knowing how to assert boundaries on behalf of others in a way that is kind, but also like not wavering. I think that's super important. And I think that something that I work on just in my capacity as a human, but it's definitely super relevant to leadership too, is being able to communicate clearly, because I think that, you know, you can have the best idea in the world or be the most knowledgeable person in your field, but if you can't distill your knowledge down to something that regular people can understand, that limits its impact so much.
Absolutely.
So, you know, being able to communicate in a way that can be understood widely is a really, really valuable skill for leaders and just for people.
Yeah, it is. If you could sit down with anybody, like we've just sat down today, and have a coffee chat and pick their brain, who would you want to sit down with?
Is it living or dead, or living?
Any.
Okay.
No limitations.
Well, my first answer, and I would not want to do this because I would be terrified she would hate me. You know what I mean? Well, I just
who? I need to know who.
With any of my leaders, or not leaders, my heroes. You know what I mean? I'm kind of in the I wouldn't want to meet my biggest heroes because it would just terrify me. But Mary Oliver, I mean, obviously it would be Mary Oliver. Like, who else would it be? I love RuPaul. I would love to talk to RuPaul. We have the same birthday.
Love that.
Yes. I love Glennon Doyle. But yeah, it would be Mary Oliver 100%. But I would be terrified of her, so I don't think I would want to.
We'll see what she would think. I don't think so.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, now we've made it to the very last question of the entire interview, which is the Billboard question. And I know you answered this on our first episode, but every time you come on the Leadership and Yoga podcast, you get a new billboard. So it's great, fresh start. If you had a billboard that was going to be seen by everybody in the world, what would you want to put on your billboard?
So I think, thinking about our conversation today, boiling it down to a billboard, would be the parts of you that you think are least deserving of love are the ones that need it most.
The parts of you that you think are least deserving of love are the parts that need it the most.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that would be it. I think that if we all looked at the parts of ourselves that we have shoved away, the world would be so different, and we would all just be so much more free.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Victoria. This was absolutely beautiful. It was a dream come true. It's really, really an honor. And if you want to let people know where they can find you, I know it's the Daily Victorian, but also where they can find Make Believe and all the things, anything else you want to share.
Yes. So you can find me at the Daily Victorian on TikTok and Instagram. And Make Believe, you can, I don't know the right way to say that. I think I made a link where if you go to tinyurl.com/makebelieve, it will take you to the Penguin Random House page that has all the different places you can order it from. You could order it from Target or your local bookstore. That would be cool to like support a local bookstore. And I'm sure that as of the time this comes out, I have more, I'm able to speak about this more coherently.
Yes.
Better intel. Thank you so much for having me. Yes. I adore you. It's amazing to be in this studio talking to you a year later and see all your growth. And yeah, it's just an honor to get to spend time with you. And I'm excited for our day. We're going to go see Wicked. I'm excited.
Cool. Well, thank you. Love received and also returned right back to you. And if you're tuning in, thank you for making it all the way to the end of the episode. And we'll catch you next time. Ciao. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Leadership and Yoga podcast, please take a moment to drop me a rating and to subscribe. And if you can, it is incredibly helpful if you share this episode with the world, with a friend, or with anybody else that you think it might resonate with. And I am sending you a virtual pat on the back, high five, and a hug. And thanks for being here. We'll catch you in the next episode. Ciao, ciao.